Hi, I'm here with Richard Wickliffe, a longtime insurance fraud subject matter expert. Rich, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm housed in South Florida, and I led, as you know, in the insurance industry, special investigation units that investigate potentially fraudulent claims. I was a leader of SIU teams in Miami, which you may or may not know has had a small fraud problem. I was in leadership with one of the top carriers for over 20 years there, and 25 years total in the SIU industry.
And you have a book, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty proud. After telling so many insurance stories and going around and speaking to agents and carriers and even lay people, I realized insurance fraud doesn't get a lot of press. So I put together a book. It's called You Paid for This, to sort of outline to the people they don't realize. I believe it was calculated people pay like $932 a person per year to fund insurance, and it goes straight to increased premiums. So it's got everything from wild organized crime stories all the way down to humorous stories. And I'm very proud to say it just won a book award with the state of Florida. It was held up at the Capitol this last weekend, and it'll be part of the FSU library. And it also won an International Impact Award in the business category. So people seem to like it.
Well, congratulations on that. And
Thank
we
you.
love anecdotes, by the way. So hint, hint. Yeah, and before I get started on questions, I thought it was interesting. Interesting one for me is: have you ever heard of Yours Truly, Johnny Dollar, the radio program?
No.
Well, you got to check it out, and anybody who's watching this should check it out. It's on the classic radio that you channel on Sirius and XM. But he's an insurance fraud investigator, and he tells the entire tale based on his expense account. Of course, this was in the 50s, so his expense account is like, $1.25 for a steak and a iced tea, so on and so forth.
Oh, that sounds funny.
Well, it's kind of nostalgic for some people. So you've been involved in detecting fraud after disasters for a while. Tell us what it's been like that for like the last 25 years. What's that experience like? What do you take from it?
Yeah, well, not to date myself, but my first hurricane was Andrew in Miami, Cat 5, destroyed all sorts of things, was a record breaker. Subsequent storms after that, all the way through Katrina, those were bad. And that's what sort of sparked my interest in the California fires, because my wife and I are big fans of Southern California, LA County. We've been twice in the last year. So it's just really sad to see the devastation. And I also knew, sadly, there would be a wave of fraud coming in after it, because with this many years, I know the bad guys, for lack of a better word, quickly morph their tactics to prey on these targets. And they will swoop in, they'll travel across the nation. And that's what sort of sparked me to write the article.
Yeah, the article that's on Claims Journal, which is pretty well received. Our readers seem really interested in it. So can you offer a few anecdotes of a case or two that really stands out to you most over the years?
Well, people, it's funny, the cliche with insurance fraud on like a sitcom is like a guy with a neck brace and everybody laughs. And people call it a victimless crime. But there's some cases that got very dark, involved Eastern European organized crime, murder. Things have gotten very dark, but I always said there was never a boring day. One rash of crimes that happened in South Florida, predominantly South Beach, and probably happens in other wealthy areas like in LA, is these young ladies. They were Russian, Eastern European, working for a crime boss, would sit next to a gentleman that appears successful at a fancy bar. They'd see that he has nice jewelry, that sort of thing, and basically slip something in his drink so he passes out. And the way we would get the claims in the insurance business is an odd set of facts, such as my Rolex is gone and I have no memory of anything except I met a young lady at a lounge on South Beach. We started getting a rash of these. And invariably they would say, I know my wife's a policyholder, but can you please not mention this claim to her? I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, she's a named policyholder. We might talk to her. All right, then cancel the claim. Forget the whole claim. So they ultimately arrested a ring in South Florida, and they would fly in these girls from Eastern European with 90-day visas and send them out. They literally called it to hunt. And we noticed a lot of policyholders were pilots because maybe they appeared well-to-do. They knew they'd only be in town for a small amount of time. They rarely got tested because they're humiliated, they're embarrassed, but that would go around in cycles and it would come back every few years.
Wow. Well, you read a lot about fraud, insurance fraud, and ones that I get, press releases to my inbox are usually like, somebody who was a contractor and they're videoed at the gym, benching 250, after they file a claim, on a slip disc, is that's kind of the mild end of it. Is there any like funny anecdotes that you recall?
We've had people that told us an examination under oath is like a deposition, and it was Ramadan, which I'm not an expert in that holiday, but he said under oath, it's Ramadan and I'm not permitted to lie. So can we please do this on another day?
Wow.
That was interesting. You never know what you're going to get. And you get everything then on the dark side where listen to the set of facts and you can understand why it would go straight to SIU. The set of facts was, and this is a policyholder we had homeowners policy with and auto policies. And he said, men kidnapped me, tied me up, drugged me, made me sign over all my assets, including my life policies and a quit claim to my house and all my cars. And then they tried to kill me and I escaped. And then they tried to burn me. And here I am in the hospital. Needless to say, even at that juncture, I went straight to SIU. To make a very long story short, he was completely telling the truth. It was a gang of really bad guys in Miami. He barely survived. And I found him actually, lives here and near me in Boca Raton. And I chatted with him in my book. But they made it, if it sounds a little bit familiar, they made a movie called Pain and Gain with The Rock and I forgot who else was in it. But for whatever reason, the geniuses in Hollywood decided to go with a dark comic tone, which we all flipped out when we were involved in the case, especially the victim, because there was nothing funny about it. And they tried making it a comedy, and the movie did flop. But maybe one day they'll do one that's a little more faithful to the true story.
I said I like reading about some of the funny ones, but I don't want to hear about.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I'm trying. As we're chatting,
right. That's a scary story, but it's a good one for our listeners.
I probably have some funny ones, and as we chat here, I'll go through my.
That'll be your next piece for us. How about that? The funniest fraud cases that I've dealt with. So, well, yeah. Now you mentioned the LA wildfires. That was a big deal for us as well. What sort of fraud do you think that these SIUs that's dealing with these fires are seeing right now? What situations are they having to handle?
Well, what I predict, and this is based on many years of large catastrophes, the first wave will be fraud against the unfortunate homeowners and policyholders. They're already devastated. The first wave of fraud are these grifter types, bad public adjusters, unscrupulous contractors. And basically, they knock on doors. They offer to do this, to do that, maybe tree removal, anything. And they push really hard for cash. They're very persuasive. The worst ones will make them sign really bad contracts that are detrimental to them. I don't know if you have AOBs in California where they basically step into the shoes of the policyholder. They can sue the carrier. And these are fly-by-night people that may never even do the work, or if they do the work, it's really bad quality. They prey on elderly people. They prey on people whose English isn't their first language. It's very predatory. To answer your question, the second wave of fraud, sadly, you may have policyholders that resort to perpetrating fraud. Because one of the unique characteristics of these large fires is that it's plausible for someone to say their property got completely destroyed. Because in a lot of losses, there's something left. Like if it's a hurricane and it's a grand piano, there's something left to look at. If someone claims expensive art, expensive electronics, jewelry, high dollar stuff, it's absolutely believable when they say, well, there's nothing left. So basically, you have to take their word for it. And insurance companies are going to have to be very patient and find other ways to investigate, maybe photos, plenty of statements, sales paperwork. And the new wave, which is even more concerning, is the use of AI. You've seen these virtual images. We've seen cases now where people use AI to falsify photography, sales documents, all sorts of things. And a good SIU rep or a good carrier can take extra steps to verify these purchases. But imagine an operation where their goal is to settle as many claims as possible. You can see how an overworked adjuster in a cubicle may just process these things like this. And,
Right.
then the cliche comes back. All that fraud gets kicked right back to the policyholders. So,
Well, in your piece that you wrote for us, you mentioned it's imperative that insurance professionals, from like agents to claims staff, recognize the warning signs of fraud. So what are a few of those signs?
we call the agents a lot of times the first line. A lot of people get insurance online now, but you still visit real agents on the big ticket items like your home insurance and things like that. They're the first line. A lot of times they know the policyholder. They have relationships with the policyholder. Big red flags are people that are brand new, have no other business except brand new business. We call them, they walked in off the street, they insured a boat, but they just found you on a sidewalk and all that. They'll pay first month's premium only. On the claim side, someone perpetrating fraud will usually badger the employee to get things paid quicker, make threats to go over their head. I'm going to go to your boss's boss. I'm going to file suit on Monday. These type of things, especially when you ask them to document things or give recorded statements, which put yourself in their shoes. If you had a legitimate loss, you would be fine doing those things. I'd be fine giving a statement or trying to find receipts. But the ones that seem to blow their stack and threaten things, that's a red flag. Another thing that we've learned in Florida, imagine someone that wasn't insured. So they may get a policy now and then retroactively try to claim that damage as new damage. For example, here in Florida, we've had 2 major hurricanes in this past year, and there are people that are putting in claims stating the date of loss was something way before, and this to avoid a hurricane deductible, that sort of thing. So it's imperative then to really do a lot of digging, take statements, aerial photos, hiring of forensic experts. Unfortunately, those things are really expensive, but you got to do that stuff.
Well, Rich, I really appreciate this. This has been great, and I enjoyed the stories, even the dark ones. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Don.